forward to for a while. But before we get on talking about that, how's your week been, Brent? Keeping busy now we're starting to cool down and going to breeding?
Going well. Did the first pairings today, actually. So it's official, season starting. And there was one pair hooked up just before I came in the shed too. So it's early days, but it's always good to see a little bit of action.
Yeah, nice. So what was your lockup today? Was it ants or carpets?
Carpets, actually. Sunglow zebra jag to a zebra head albino. So it should be a nice little bunch of albinos and sunglow super zebs, and should be a nice little good variety patch.
Yeah, nice. I actually had my sunglow zeb jag. He feeds well and everything, but just a very quiet snake, And I thought, I actually sometimes questioned his masculinity, let's say. And I put one of the pepper boys in with him. Oh, didn't he fire right up real quick? It's like the most active I've ever seen him move. So
combat got him going.
Yeah, he's been off on duties. So but yeah, same. I've done a few of my own pairings as well myself this week with a few lockups, a few ants, a couple of carpets. So it's all starting.
One special one we won't discuss yet, but one good start.
Yeah, yes, we will work hard on that one. That's for sure. But anyway, so we got a few people starting to pop in now. Charlie D, Chris O'Donnell, afternoon. Michael Ward, howdy folks from Copperbella. Where's that? Finally show while I'm on night shift. So you can sit down, do nothing and watch us dribble. That's good. Dylan Parker, Elizabeth Randall, evening. So tonight we've got Dr Michelle Dalli. She's a proprietor and reptile specialist vet from North Richmond Veterinary Hospital. Michelle and I have been friends for a long time. Always been my preferred vet to go to. Michelle's been dealing with reptiles for how many years, Michelle?
About 16 years now.
16 years. So
as a vet, but a lot longer before then as a keeper.
Yeah, well, Michelle also used to keep quite a few reptiles and breed rats back in the day as well.
I did all of it. I don't have actually any reptiles as pets myself now, but Tom has a plenty.
Yeah, there you go. So Michelle's got quite a bit of experience from both sides of it, and also worked with many other experienced vets, such as David Vella. He's over on the North Shore at
Serve.
Yep.
Serve.
Yeah. So, why don't, Michelle, if you want to, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've done. Save me doing all the talking, I guess.
Sure. Well, I graduated about 16 years ago from vet science, and I was always interested in reptiles. I started going to the Hawkesbury Herb Clubs and got my first reptiles, and I had my first degree. So when I was about 20 or so, and kept a lot, bred some. Now bred all rats and mice, did all that. I've had lizards, monitors, and snakes, and now, I guess as a vet, there weren't many vets doing reptiles, and it's hard to learn. You have to teach yourself. So it's pretty much what I did, working with keepers and everything. And just over the years, I see more and more and see all different things. So now Tom's the keeper in my house, not me. He looks after them all.
No longer the
says that he's got enough reptiles and gets more all the time. Pretty typical.
Yeah, typical.
But new stuff keeps coming out all the time. So like the industry or the veterinary side of reptile keeping and reptile medicine has improved dramatically since I've become a vet. So it's really nice. We get to do a lot more diagnostics and testing and treating animals more than it was when I first started. And the demographic of reptile keepers changed a lot since I started being a vet too. It's a lot more mixture, a lot more families and, different people that keep reptiles, not just the typical reptile people that we used to see at the start.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I remember going to the shows, there'd be a certain genre of people almost, whereas now you go to the shows. I mean, you've been to the early shows, so now you see a lot more family, young kids and everything. It's really good.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think there's a lot more
first pets and stuff?
Do you think there's a lot more demand on vets now for reptiles? Like over the years, obviously the hobby's grown more. Do vets get away with not being reptile people anymore?
Yeah, because there's more reptiles being kept as pets. So more people are having them as pets, not just as a collection. So when you have a big collection, sometimes you'll have an animal that's worth a lot of money, but sometimes they're not, the value's not that high, so you're not going to invest a lot to try and get it better. But if it's your pet and it's your only lizard or your only snake, then people will invest a lot more to try to get them better, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely like cats and dogs, I suppose. People will spend anything, that's like their babies.
Yeah.
They'll do whatever they need to do.
Yeah, they do. And then people are becoming more educated. There's lots of information online. So the husbandry is better. They're keeping them better. They're often getting them from a more reputable source, which gives them the information that they need. But husbandry is still the main issue when it comes to reptiles.
Yeah, same. Do you see much in the way of, obviously, in light of recent events, there was a couple of people that were, we're not going to go into the subject, but there was a couple of people caught for poaching animals. Is that something, do you see much in the way of wild caught stuff coming in at work at all? Or?
I wouldn't, not compared to what I used to. But now I feel like most of them are captive bred. I don't see many animals now that I think, oh, this is a wild animal. But sometimes
exotics the same.
But usually, no, I haven't seen many exotics lately. I used to see a lot more. I don't know whether they just don't bring them into vets because they're scared of getting caught, but not really. Most of the exotics I see now come from DPI and I have to euthanize them.
Sad.
It's sad.
Yeah, well,
it is what it is.
If they're from unknown origins, so to speak, what choices do they have? I guess.
Yeah, and there's no one. They're not going to let people put them on their license. So most of them are common things that zoos don't want.
Yeah, and obviously, like Taronga, for example, I remember talking to Michael McFadden, it's a 14-month quarantine period down there alone. So, taking something common, take up a quarantine spot for 14 months, they just can't afford it.
Or a giant berm. Who's going to take a giant Burmese?
That's right. Won't even fit the garbage bin.
Like no, exactly.
That's crazy.
It's sad though, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the gamble. It's always going to fall on back to, the viruses and things that could potentially be brought into the country. That's always going to be their justification for euthanasia.
Yeah,
and sadly, that's possibly where some came from that we see now. There's always been talk that some of the viruses we have here are exact copies, of strains they've found overseas in Germany and UK. So sadly, the magic portal did bring some things here.
Yeah, of course. It's been happening for years, hasn't it? Since
the
start of reptile keeping.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit less nowadays, but certainly. I mean, you'll never stop it, unfortunately.
I think it's no, and I think sometimes I worry that more of Australian stuff's going over because it's valuable in the States and stuff.
Yeah,
people spend more money on animals in the States than they do here.
Yeah, some big dollar tickets over there. So you got a couple of questions there, Brent. You want to fire them off, and we'll try and get a few of these things knocked out, and then I'll say some hellos in the chat in a minute. Got a few people.
Yeah, plenty to get through. So I guess we'll kick off probably first with quarantine stuff rather than the virus stuff. I guess quarantine comes before the testing side of it. So I know Darren and I have been to a few talks with a couple of different vets and different people over the years, and the difference on quarantine, I guess, has changed for a long time. It was always thought longer quarantine periods were necessary. I guess these days, providing you are testing, quarantine can actually be a shorter period of time now.
Yep. It can be, depending what you're worried about and what you're testing for and what you have in your collection and what you're getting in and the value of your animals and where your quarantine facility is. So in the ideal world, if you have a valuable collection, your quarantine should ideally not be on the same building or definitely not in the same room, but in a different building would be ideal. So even if you had like a garage outside or you had someone else's place that you could quarantine your animals at and you don't even touch them at all and go and touch your collection, that's ideal. Because we're able to test for so many things now, you can test when they first come into quarantine and rule out that they don't have anything infectious, and then test 3 months later, 6 months later, to see what's going on, to make sure that they're negative before you introduce them into your collection. But there's no set time. I think I listened to a talk a while ago from a vet overseas, and I think they do about 90 days in a zoo setting, but they test for certain things before and at the end of quarantine. But if you're going to quarantine, you got to do it properly. I think that's my biggest issue that I see people do wrong, is that they say that they quarantine, but they're not doing it properly. You can't go and touch your animals in quarantine and then go to your collection. You can't put anything from that room or that area into your collection at all, ever. It has to always be the last thing you do, and then have a shower, or just do it on a separate day or something like that. We're fortunate with reptiles. They don't need to be walked. They don't need to be taken out of their cages. You know, you can quarantine in something and only feed them once a week and check on them every 2 or 3 days. So you don't have to do it every single day, depending on the species, of course. But it's hard. It's a hard question to answer. There's no set, like, this would definitely be safe to do.
Yeah, and I guess like
it comes down to testing, I suppose. You know, if you've tested right, and you know, you've in the time frame of testing, you could have something out of quarantine technically in 3 months, 4 months, providing you've tested on entry and tested going out.
Yeah,
Scott Iper makes a point here. Sorry, I'll just jump in. Impossible to off-site quarantine with current licensing systems. And if you want to take the letter of the law, that's probably
stupid.
It is. So technically, yes, is correct. But you know, if I'm protecting my collection here at home and I have the option, I wouldn't care what national parks told me. My quarantine would be offsite.
Yeah.
I think you'd have a pretty good argument too if you had 3 snakes in a separate building, you know, at a family member's place or a workplace or somewhere. You know, they came and checked your numbers and you were 3 out, and you showed them where they were and why. You know, that's really what parks are about. He's trying to keep the hobby, you know, as a whole, and the animals in the right place and healthy. So, I don't think they're that bad of people that they're jumping on you for that sort of thing. But it's how much testing is getting done now.
You don't want my opinion on it. On the licensing system.
That's not
trying not to upset.
Trying
not to upset too many people.
No. How much testing am I doing? A lot, especially in the last 6 months, 6 to 12 months. A lot of people are testing their whole collections, which means it's lots of animals that are getting tested. Some people are testing certain animals in their collections, so like maybe doing animals that have been with other animals, or certain ones in a rack, or more valuable animals, or that sort of thing. But I have been doing lots lately in both dragons and snakes. And I'd say about 50% are turning out positive on average. So I'm getting lots.
Wow.
Yeah. It's quite surprising, actually.
That's scary, because obviously we're still just looking at sunshine, nidovirus, and bornovirus as the main 3.
Yep. And the dragon one.
Yep. ADV. Yep.
I've got a mental blank right now. Adenovirus in the dragons is really common. And we're seeing microplasma in some animals as well, snakes and lizards.
So
and you can test for nidovirus in skinks, but I've only tested a couple and I haven't had any positive.
So for mycoplasma, what is that? So for people that don't understand, how is that?
Mycoplasma is it's a respiratory bacterial infection, so you can actually treat it, which is good. But treatment's not easy because it's an oral antibiotic every day, which is not easy for a snake, especially if you're not really experienced in like orally tubing a snake. And most snakes aren't going to be eating every day. Not too hard in lizard. It's more common in overseas in tortoises and turtles than here.
Yeah. And what's the cause of it? Is it like husbandry or dirty water?
No, just another contagious disease. Contagious disease. Yeah. It's come from something else. Yeah. Do you want me to answer some of these questions? No viruses that I know are notifiable in Australia. The viruses that are seen overseas, like IBD and virus, which was OPMV, I don't diagnose in Australia. We rarely test for it, and we don't think the numbers here are very high. Years ago, when I didn't have virus testing available, the PCRs, and we used to do, if a snake died, I'd send it off for histopath. It used to always come back as OPMV all the time. And I'm like, they can't all have the same thing. And they're not, because I never test it. It never comes up positive in a PCR. And then if you were going to test your whole collection, ideally you would test every animal, because I've seen collections where half of them are positive, half are negative, or 3 are positive and the rest are negative. So the only way to know for sure is to test them all, but it's expensive. And Tim's the only guy that does it now, Tim in Murdoch Uni. he developed
Yep.
the test,
WA.
and he was supposed to put his prices up in December, and he hasn't yet. He has had the same prices since 2014, so
Wow.
he will be increasing the price eventually. Yeah, I'm sure, especially since he's doing so many more now.
So for people watching, what's, if you wanted to get an animal tested, what are they from a vet? Obviously got to take it in. You got to do your swabs or take bloods. What is it you do,
Yep.
and what are they looking at a cost per
I don't-
test, or what?
I don't
what?
charge. I just charge for the test. I don't charge for my consult. So if you come in and just want your snakes tested, I just charge for that. It's $140 for the first virus and $90 for each one after.
You got a
So if you're
disco going on
testing,
over there.
oh, sorry, I'm rocking my chair. If you're testing testing 3, so if you go like sunshine, nido, and bornovirus, that's what 140 plus 180.
Yeah, yep.
So that works out. My maths isn't good.
320.
So it's expensive. It's expensive. It's expensive when you start doing 20 snakes or 30 snakes. But
Is it still, they're talking just one test for sunshine, 2 tests for nidovirus? What's the protocol now as far as numbers?
I think so. Like how frequently you got to test?
Yeah, like if you want to be 100% clear for nido, do you do one test straight up and then another test 3 to 4 months later?
Yeah. Yes. If you get a negative result, it's recommended to repeat testing and do a second and possibly a third one while they're in quarantine, especially if it's a valuable collection. If it has any respiratory signs at all, if it's infected, prognosis is usually poor. Snub snakes can carry sunshine virus, so if they're positive, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get sick, but they can be asymptomatic for years, and we don't know. And there have been some snakes that have had sunshine that have bred, and there's been only one study done on whether the babies will become infected or not. That study showed a clutch of eggs that was born from 2 snakes that were infected. The hatchlings that hatched were negative, but the hatchlings that didn't hatch, that were unviable, had sunshine virus in them, so they were positive. That's the only study done. There hasn't been any more done. I'm not unaware if there's any more studies being done currently, but to my own personal knowledge, I haven't tested hatchlings, so only the adults.
Yeah, which that answers that question
So
that Daniel
we
Brett
don't know.
asked there.
And then, and then for nido and borno, we don't know. I have seen no information, and I did a bit of a read up before tonight to look to see if there's anything new going out, and there isn't. I haven't seen anything. So as far as we're aware now, we're not sure about the other 2. It looks like from one study quite a few years ago that sunshine virus hatchlings are negative, but only going to know if people start testing. I don't think it's enough information. I wouldn't be confident if I bred sunshine virus positive snakes to say that those babies are clear. I'd be honest with people and say that the parents are positive, the baby should be clear, but not everyone's going to be honest.
Yeah. So just on topic, sort of on the side, Michael Ward-Grod asked a question here along. He says, Michelle, given the access, actually I'll put it up. Read it. I don't know if it'll. Oh, there we go. Given the access of information and the extent of research being done, have you come across anything new, or that you just couldn't find an answer or definite diagnosis for? Are there concerns you have of things to come?
There's a new virus that they've just identified recently. I think it's a binovirus overseas. I'm not sure if it's in Australia or not yet. I'd say there's heaps more viruses out there, would be my gut feeling, because 10 years ago, we didn't have any. We had OPMV and IDD, which get diagnosed with everything. Now we've got sunshine, nido, bornovirus that we can test for. We can test for microplasma. We can test for herpes virus in turtles. There's nidovirus in skinks. So as we're getting more knowledge, there's more things coming out because we're testing for them. But some of them are endemic. Some of them are in the natural population, as with beardies.
Yeah.
If Ronnie did that study and found out that was it 20% or something of the population in the wild are positive.
It actually had it. Yeah.
And
that's right.
Yeah, and in the States, some of the biggest breeders of bearded dragons in the States that sell to those big pet shops, like PetSmart and all those ones, their collections are 80% positive. So
they're
still breeding and they're still selling them.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the thing. So it makes you wonder, I guess, from your perspective, how many of those animals that you're testing, say, Fred brings in, 5 snakes to get tested, 2 are clear, 3 are positive, for argument's sake.
Yeah.
Are they then
But they're
taking
not
those
sick.
animals home, or are they just saying
Yeah.
euthanize them on the spot? Or
I've had some clients decide to euthanize all their collection except for their favorite snakes, and they're just not going to have snakes anymore. They're just keeping their favorites and closing their collection. Most people close their collection down. Some of them cull. Some people keep them alive just because they're their pets.
yeah, which is fair enough. But you know, I guess the point I was getting to is, yeah. I was just going to say, you know, how many people are then taking those animals knowing they're sick and then try and offload them? You know, like I'll just take it and get rid of it and making
I'm not sure.
putting it more, so to speak.
No. People wouldn't be honest with me if they were going to do that. I don't think.
Yeah. No.
But I'm not sure. I've euthanized some, but not a lot. But it's okay for people to euthanize their own snakes. Like technically, as far as reptile ethics go, with humane euthanasia, putting them in the freezer is humane. I would rather euthanize them with Leopard because I think that's more humane personally. It never used to be okay to put them in the freezer, but now it is. But ethically, that's an okay way to do it. So I think that some people have done that.
Yeah, okay. Because that opens up a whole heated debate there. The amount of people who go, oh, it's like ice running through your veins and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
If you
Who
know,
knows?
Yeah, there's also
it's hard to assess pain in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what most people do. Scott was saying that it's impossible to have a negative test.
Yep,
the sample didn't have the virus, I guess. So the test that we are doing are PCR tests. And what a PCR test is, it detects the DNA or RNA of the virus in the sample. So with those tests, if you have a positive, you have that DNA there. Now, for sunshine virus, it can be a bit tricky because it can mean that that snake could be in an enclosure that had a positive snake in there and could have virus on its body or in its mouth, but not actually have the disease. So you could get a false positive in rare circumstances. But generally, if the snake test is positive or the lizard test positive, it means they definitely have the virus. If they test negative, then there's no evidence of the virus, like in the test that we do. You can't prove any other way that they're actually negative unless you take biopsies. So actual tissue samples and send that. And unfortunately, it's a bit hard to take a bit of a brain. I know that places overseas, like big zoos and stuff, they will often, depending on the disease they're looking for, they may do like anesthetize the snake or the lizard and take samples of spleen and liver and test for virus in that. And that's a more definitive way.
Yeah. There you go.
It is possible to do that, but it's costly.
Yeah, naturally, that would be an expensive way of testing.
Yeah.
On that matter, how long do you think the virus can live off without a host? Like if you've got a sunshine or born a positive
sunshine,
animal,
not long.
Yep, days, weeks.
No, it's really viable. They're not the sort of virus. For sunshine, I'm not sure about the other two, but for sunshine, it shouldn't last very long in the environment. But the RNA, the actual it's not DNA, it's RNA in some viruses, has been found for a long time in the environment. We don't know how contagious that is, but it can make your snake chem positive, right? So that's what they're worried about more than the actual contagiousness. I think it has to be quite direct to get exposure and to get infectious. To get rid of the RNA and DNA in the cage, you need to use bleach and you need to leave it on for 30 minutes. You need to do that twice. It's not easy, but pretty much spray the cage and walk away and leave it and come back and wipe it later. F10 I don't think will. You need to use bleach. No, you need to use bleach to denature the DNA and the RNA in some viruses.
Yeah.
So as a general cleaner, I would be happy using F10. If you had a snake that was positive for sunshine and it was in a cage that you want to use again, then I would be bleaching that before you put a negative snake in.
Yep. So when you say bleaching, are you using like full strength bleach, or you
No, dilute it. It's like I think it's a 1 in 10 or a 10% bleach solution, and you spray it all down. Yeah.
Yep. So basically, use it just
as far as I know. Yeah, as far as I know, the viruses are spread from mucus in the mouth or cloacal contact. So oral
Feces.
fecal or things like that, or from direct contact from mouth to mouth with the snake, like when they lick and their tongue comes out. I don't think it's been determined if it's airborne, but I don't think those studies have been done to my knowledge. But maybe they have, and I haven't seen it.
Generally, it's being spread by people handling those animals and handling other snakes in their collection.
So. Yeah, or putting them together. Yeah.
So obviously, I mentioned before about shows. I mean, there was a little while ago, a few people going, going to shows, they're just spreading virus and all this sort of stuff. Now, I've been doing the shows, as you know, Michelle, since 2007 when we did the first one. Everything's always maintained, locked in its box, doesn't come out, doesn't get handled by anyone. When someone purchases the animal, goes into a container, it goes off. If chances of spreading anything is almost minimal.
I hate it when I go to a show and I see someone buys a snake and then they get it out and they're carrying it all over the place. I'm like, dude, put it back in the cage. Like, just get it. As snakes don't cough and sneeze, but you do go around shaking people's hands, so you should, really be careful of that sort of thing. If you've just handled some of your snakes, then you go to the guy next door and shake his hand, say hi, and he's been handling his snake, maybe. But those sort of things haven't been fully determined.
Because I know myself and, most others generally at the shows are quite strict. People often come up, can we touch it? Is it bitey? All those kind of things. No. But I still see...
If I was at a show, I wouldn't let anyone touch my snakes or my lizards or anything for sale. They can just look at it, and when they take it, I'm the one that puts it in a cage, like a container, and you take it. That's it. That's what I would do.
Because we have seen other vendors, the little take their snakes out, let people hold it, and then those people are walking along. What's the chance of a transfer that way? Minimal?
I don't know, but you shouldn't do it. They should have rules at their shows that there shouldn't be any animals out of cages or enclosures.
They do. Just to stop that. That is the rule, but it still happens, sadly. And people maybe, the general public probably not that educated, but I think people selling it shows should be far more careful with these things, not to, even allow that risk to their own collection, never mind the rest of the people in the room.
Yeah. So
and last time I took my little dog there and they picked me up straight away, so they should pick up other people.
That's funny, right in front of me as well. That's funny. Should have said it was a guide dog, Michelle.
I know, I've got a little
you were the vet on site as well. Troy asked a question with the night-owling skinks. Can that be transferred to snakes? And I suppose the opposite of that question, can snake viruses get transferred to anything with four legs?
Not that I'm aware of. I think the snake nitivirus is different to the lizard one. I can look into it and see, but my knowledge is no. Microplasma could probably go from different species because it's a bacteria.
Second to that, when we talk about the python viruses, what are you seeing those in? Because I've had people ask, do you know of anyone that has it in BHPs? Anyone has it in ollies or green tree pythons? Or, is it just strictly Morelia, or is it Aspidites as well? Or,
I think I have seen some Aspidites, and I've seen Antiviral and Morelias.
Yeah.
I can't recall exactly which viruses I've seen in each one, but I've definitely seen all. I saw someone ask about venomous. I haven't seen a venomous snake positive, but I don't think I've tested any.
Certainly the talk was monitors seem to be exempt from it, but Leopard's probably under the same cloud, it seems.
Yeah. I haven't tested any monitors either. In his testing protocol, there isn't a monitor thing on there. But I can't see. Maybe venomous can't get them. I'm not sure, or we're just not testing.
It's probably also the amount of ones that are actually kept in collections would be a far smaller percentage.
And I think I'm trying to remember if when we had our leopards where I tested them or not. I can't remember. But there are viruses in the leopards overseas, and they have tested positive. Opium V's in the leopards, I'm pretty sure, from my memory. But yeah. Less people with the leopards bring him to the vet. But I still see them. Right. I like seeing them. I like leopards. They're pretty.
Yeah, they are. They're very cool. I do miss doing the rescues and having a few here. Daniel Brettle asked, have any recovered from any of the viruses?
Yes, not Sunshine, Nido, or Borna. I was reading something earlier. There's one. I have to find it. That they use an antiviral, and they've had some go clear, but it's more the ones that are seen in the States, not here. So not our ones.
And I suppose,
Yeah.
I know this was a question, I'm probably still a bit of Brent's thunder here. You had written down, is there anything in the pipeline at this point in time as a antiviral injection for them, so to speak, or a cure, or
not that I know of. No.
Yeah.
Not that I know of.
No, I imagine
the only report I saw was using an antiviral for only certain viruses.
Yeah, sadly. I was hoping that when they did that testing with the Sunshine babies, that hatched out, possibly the blood work in some of those might have led to, were they just negative for Sunshine by luck, or do they actually have something in them that beat the Sunshine? I thought they would have been the perfect study, those animals from there, but
probably I'd say that they hadn't been infected, or they were infected and not showing signs yet. They weren't expressing the virus yet. You don't know. And unless you do serial testing of the life of the animal, you're not going to know. Or you biopsy it, you're not going to know. So there's a study. There's a cool study to do.
I guess it comes down to dollars, like who's going to spend the money to do this stuff, and is the market big enough to justify?
Like if all the keepers got together, you could do some pretty cool studies. I'd have to talk to Tim to see if he could do a discount of price to do something like that. And he could be involved with the papers and stuff, but I'm not sure what his budget is and where he gets money when he does studies to run the test.
It's like anything, the more we start to understand, the more questions get raised.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. So Tara Swanson asked, you just going back to the false positives, I'll just put that up there. So you can, if it was a false positive due to enclosure, could you remove the snake from that enclosure and test again?
Yes.
Could the snake then test negative?
Yes. And Tim's advises to do that in some cases, especially with the beta dragons. That, if you have 3 beta dragons in the same enclosure, then you should separate them and put them in a different enclosure each. Wait a little while, then test them and see whether there's one still positive or negative, because you might have one positive one that's then having the virus present in the other ones. Because it's an endemic virus, some of them must be just resistant to it, I assume. Because I don't know how else you could have some in an enclosure that some are positive and some are negative.
I think if one's got it, it's going to spread it to the other two. So, maybe they've got a built-in immunity system to them.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry, you got another question here, Brent? I'm just reading through and I'll pop up more as we go along.
Throw Joe Forza's question up there about the cost reduction. I mean, Michelle mentioned about Tim looking at price rising now for...
the prices are Tim's prices. He's the only guy in Australia that does them. And, we don't put a huge markup on it. That's why ours is cheaper than some of the other vets around. But I still have to do some sort of... I can't do it for free. And his
time
postage.
Yeah.
I think that
exactly. I have to put him as... I do use some equipment to do it. I have to use a swab. I have to use a container. I have to use saline. My time is valuable. If I have any snakes, it takes a lot of time to do that. So I'm not charging people for my time. I put a markup on the test price, and that's how I make my money off doing it. We do that for all the tests that we do in all our animals. My markups aren't high compared to other vets. We all have our own being a vet and how much money we make as a business. But he used to do pool testings where you could test 5 snakes and put it in the one test, but he stopped doing that. So...
Yep, certainly back in the days, the batch was great.
Testing in a Leopards definitely did get OPMV. There was a Leopards overseas that got tested, and if there was some in Australia, then they must have got it. But I'm not sure what testing they did at that lab, because when I used to do PMV, the only test I had years ago was histology, where they look at the cells under the microscope and inclusion bodies or signs indicative of OPMV. For sure is to do either electron microscopy, where they actually visualize the viruses, or do PCR to look for the DNA of the virus. And I think they used to do serology, where they look for antigens of the virus, and I could only get those tests done if I sent them overseas, from my knowledge when I first became a vet. Whether the government was doing something, I don't know, but I know they were positive. But I had heaps of snakes positive to OPMV when I sent it off with, or indicative of OP, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So Dr. Freeman asked, which we kind of touched base on this, how the virus is spread, and obviously through contact mainly. He's then said, have they determined if sunshine is airborne or not? So are there any viruses out there that we should be concerned about being airborne?
Done those tests.
Yeah. So
I don't about any respiratory virus being, but there's no one's done those studies. No one's done the I'm aware of where they've put healthy snakes. They've done some, but none to say it is definitely spread this way, or this is definitely how it's done. There's certain types of studies you can do to determine that. I'm not aware of them.
Yeah. So it's more just a thought process. So obviously the main thing, touch contact, and obviously mites can spread it. It was another one that was asked. So
yes, definitely. So biting mites is thought to be able to spread viruses because they're biting them.
Yeah. Bit of blood from here and over to another one. So
I didn't know. Someone's saying, I don't think nidovirus is a coronavirus. Nidovirus is a nidovirus. As far as
where's that one? Oh, what is?
Someone's asking test. No, definitely not. Rat test only works for COVID-19. So you could not rat test your snake.
Specific.
Because it's not going to detect any coronavirus. As far as COVID-19 goes, that is a coronavirus that we can catch. Your common cold is also a coronavirus, but our rat tests only detect COVID-19. But nidoviruses are a nidovirus.
Different virus,
Yeah.
So what else? What other questions you got there, Brent? Sorry, go on, Michelle.
I think the nidoviruses was the one that was called that die-off in the Bellinger River as well.
Was that the turtle one? What was the turtle population? That was the turtle population, wasn't it?
In the turtles in the Bellinger River, remember? Yeah. Nearly all of them died?
Yeah.
They came back as related to the snake's nidovirus.
Because I know there was an argument that they were saying, it's just the dingoes eating the eggs, or monitors digging up the babies, but it was like population.
No, they were all dying. The actual turtles were dying.
Yeah. I remember talking to Cole South about that at Horseby Herps just quite a few years ago now. Yeah. Trying to get them to look into it, which they finally did.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. So what other questions you got there, Brent? Well, I'm just trying to read through these. Oh, that was that
skim through them. I remember I did a lot of testing in the past decade or so with Robert Johnson at Penrith. Not that it matters too much for people taking their animals in, but he was always saying, bring your animals in earlier in the week so that he could get the test. Obviously, they need to be sent
Monday,
off to
Tuesday.
WA.
Yep. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays is when I need to do them, so I can express post them and get them to WA in time. He does them in batches, so sometimes it takes a couple of weeks to get a result, but you don't want them sitting in the post thing for a couple of days. You can freeze them.
Is it safe to freeze them?
Over that way.
Yeah,
you can freeze them, but it's preferable not to.
Yeah.
So
if they're doing in these batch lots, how many are they doing at a time, do you know, in these batches?
I don't know.
Because it seemed like at one stage when I was getting testing done 6-7 years ago, we were getting tests back really quick. And then I think about 3 years ago, it got out to 90 days. Like it seemed like it was taking forever to get any sort of results back.
I've never had them take that long from Tim. The longest I've ever had them take is like 2 or 3 weeks, generally.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I just wondered if there's more.
Maybe he was sick.
Yeah.
On holiday.
Maybe there's. Yeah, I just thought that maybe there's more demand now that they're getting the batches through quicker. So the turnaround's faster.
Yes.
Which I get Joe's point that maybe I would think if there's more, it would get cheaper. Like if there's a lot more people testing.
No, because it's not necessarily that. So a PCR test isn't an easy test to run. It's quite complicated. It's not just a little, like, you put a dot on like your rat test and that's it. It's not how they work. They take equipment that's expensive, and the materials are expensive, and it's really time consuming. So the reason he used to do them in batches is because it was a waste of resources and a waste of materials to just run one. Because the way they do it, it's like this weird way that, if it's how I remember it when I was at uni 20 years ago, but the way you could do multiple at once, or just one or two, but use the same amount of equipment or materials. So that's why he does them in batches. But I see no reason why he would make it cheaper. Like, at the end of the day, he's a lab. He's using equipment. He's worked out a price that's worthwhile him doing for that, how much time it takes for him and how much resources he uses, plus the knowledge that he has from developing those tests. It's like anyone that develops something, they're going to make money off it. His price is quite reasonable compared to PCR testing in other animals. So if I do a PCR test on a dog or a cat, yes, they test for multiple things at the same time, but it's often usually around $280 or $300 for checking respiratory disease in a cat, or a diarrhea disease in dogs, where they test for a few things. So the price is actually quite good for what he's doing. And it kind of is what it is. In the States, it's cheaper. They have multiple labs that do it. They're hugely commercial. They have huge numbers that run through. But you're looking at one single man doing a lab in a uni that's doing a test for you. So I can email him and ask him, is there any way that if I'm getting people with huge collections doing it, is there a price that he could do it for cheaper? I'm happy to send him that email and see what he says. I wouldn't be surprised if he says no.
Do you think it's something, touching on that? Do you think it's something that it will get to the point where he could actually train or have another lab doing that study, or obviously?
Yeah, I guess another lab would, but I understand what you're saying, but you also have to look at how many tests are actually getting done. Even though there's lots of people in our industry doing it, compared to how many dogs and cats are getting tested for different diseases, the numbers are still small. So for a lab like Vetnostics or IDEX, which is our other main labs that do testing, they often don't do things like this because they can't justify spending the money to set up the equipment and buying the rights to do the test to be able to do it. Whereas in the States, there's lots of exotic labs. There's lots of labs that do exotics.
No,
because they're
fair enough.
Huge
and
collections,
And I suppose obviously Tim Hyman, needs to protect the time and effort and that he's put into researching and discovering these diseases. Like at the end of the day, regardless of what we think, it is still a business. He's still
hey, Mitch Hodgson. I've only tested a few blue tongues for Nido, and I haven't had any positive yet, but I haven't tested many.
So just touching on this, Dylan Parker asked a question: is there any? Put up there. Is there any or many signs that the reptile could have in these viruses? So what are the symptoms we see?
Sunshine virus can cause respiratory disease and neurological disease, and that's one of the main things. You can see either of those. So if you just have neurological signs, so your snake not riding properly or acting really weird, it'll be either sunshine virus or born virus, or it can be a renovirus, which I haven't diagnosed any here, but it's definitely really big in the States. If it's just respiratory signs, like the nidovirus, or sunshine virus, or microplasma. So they're the main ones that you're looking at for like the different signs. Sunshine can cause a few signs. Some of them can cause stomatitis, but they're your main ones. So you either got a mixture of respiratory or neurological signs, or just respiratory or just neurological.
So the ones you're testing, are they mainly brought in because people have recognised the respiratory issue, or do people bring in because they've actually seen a neurological type disorder?
Yep, some. Yeah, I've had neurological and they've come up positive. I've had some that are positive. I have some that are respiratory, they just got an RI, and so they actually don't have a virus, or they're not shedding a virus. And some are testing their collection.
So there you go. So the main things to look for, is a RI or neuro. Just don't think it's just don't worry about getting your JAGs tested generally.
I try to push everyone that has a sick reptile now to do virus testing. because if they're positive, it will mean why they're not getting better with standard therapy. So if I have a sick reptile and their husbandry is really shit, but I would still recommend to test it, because if they have a virus, having poor husbandry and having them immunocompromised is going to cause them to have virus excretion more and compromisation. And they actually do that for some quarantine facilities, and in like zoo settings, they'll immunocompromise the animal to make it shed a disease. So things like cryptosporidium, which is hard to diagnose, and sometimes they don't shed it. But if the animal becomes immunocompromised, they shed it. So they actually immunocompromise. I'm not sure how, but they do that so that they can get it.
Yeah, I actually had someone message me the other day. They had a couple of sick pythons, 2 died, and then a few more died, and asking about viruses and stuff. And I said, go get one tested. I said, obviously you've got something there, but I said, you don't know what. And I said, at least if you go get it tested, you get the results back, you know what's going on, you can then deal with it in that situation, whatever the issue might be, and then make a decision where you go from there. So, but if you don't know what it is that's
hard
killing them, you need to know what the yeah.
Is it still the best practice if you have an animal that dies, Michelle? People have often had the debate of, do you just put it in the fridge to keep it at a cold temperature before you can get it to a vet? Freezing obviously may kill off things that could get answers.
So freezing, if you want to do histopath, which means that you're looking at the cell morphology under the microscope and potentially looking for organisms, you can't freeze it, because what happens is the water molecules within the cells, individual cells, freeze and enlarge, like water gets big when it freezes, and it destroys the cells. So the architecture isn't normal. So freezing an animal and doing histopath doesn't work. You have to keep it fresh. But if you keep it fresh, after 12 hours or so, you start to get autolysis of the tissues, and so the histopath doesn't work too well. Freezing is fine if you're going to send it to Tim to do PCR on the cells. So if you're going to do PCR on the liver and the brain, which is really accurate to determine if it actually has the virus, then freezing is fine for that. But ideally,
if you want a basic necropsy, though,
post-mortem straight away. You should necropsy it and put the liver in the spleen and the separate container. That's the ideal way to do it.
Yeah.
There you go. Cut the organs out and freeze them.
Yeah.
And that's accurate.
It's not hard to do. Some people get grossed out.
Yeah. So Tremaine asks, how often do non-symptomatic animals come back positive?
A lot. There
you go. So would that be a simple case of someone's bringing in a few animals to be tested out of their collection?
People test their collection, and like 20% are positive, 80% are positive. It's really disheartening, and I hate telling people that news, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then it's you got the hard question of what to do.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. What's Elizabeth saying here? Is it true that nidovirus isn't in hatchlings? Someone said that because their lungs aren't developed quite as well. I don't
know where people get those. Not that I'm aware of, but I don't know. I can't answer that, but I couldn't understand why a young animal can't get a virus. Like, the virus is going to infect the cells. Hatchlings, their lungs are developed enough to breathe. So I can't see they can't get an infection. It doesn't make medical sense to me, but maybe there's a reason why. But to me, I see no reason why a baby can get influenza or coronavirus just like an adult can. So why can't a baby?
I think she's probably more referencing to a neonate, something that's hatched out of the egg. But once again, that would boil to your quarantine. As I was talking to someone about this the other day, if you keep your hatchies in the hatchie rack, things hatch out, go there, and you've got all your own equipment looking after that hatchie rack, and you happen to have it in the main part of your collection or whatever, and it's completely separated. I know here, I don't know about you, Brent, but I know here if I'm doing hatchies, I'm doing hatchies. If I'm doing adults, I'm doing adults. I don't do the same on the same day. Like, it's just habit. I do things in sections, in blocks. So it's probably more, something hatches out, is it got it? But obviously, you go into a room, quarantine, you handle that, then you go to your hatchie rack, start playing with everything. Obviously, as soon as it's born, it has the chance to contract the virus.
You're lucky, Darren, that you've got 3,000 snakes, so you can never do the whole lot in one day.
Exactly right. Takes me a weekend
I
to
think
do one room.
sometimes the stories like this about when people say, oh, hatchlings can't get it or they're not developed and so they can't catch it. I think sometimes those little myths get spread so people can have a reason to sell their hatchlings. Like, it's okay,
Yep.
you can buy a hatchling because it can't be positive yet or it can't catch it. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
where'd you get that from?
Yeah, well,
You know?
as soon as it's out of the egg, you know, so it just
It was on Facebook.
yeah. So they don't come out of the egg with the virus because obviously, from what you were saying before, if
No.
they have the virus, they
Well,
die.
that's from
But
one
once
study.
they're out, they can still
From
get
one
it.
study.
Yeah,
Exactly.
well, that's
I can't
it,
see why
based on
not.
one study. Yeah, absolutely.
And like, if I had a positive pair of snakes that were sunshine virus positive, and they had I would be honest with people and say that from one study, the baby should be negative, but I couldn't guarantee it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know? There's not enough studies done. Do any of the viruses pose a threat to native wild populations? Well, adenovirus in lizards is already. The others, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where they've originated from. I don't originated overseas. Like sunshine virus, I think came from the wild or originated in Sunshine Coast. Who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised if they were endemic and in cities where you have high stocking densities or stressed animals, that those diseases become evident and cause a problem, like it is with the bearded dragons. But I don't know. No one has gone. I think there's been one study where they tested only a very small handful of snakes over in WA for viruses, but they haven't done that since.
In the wild, they actually did test stuff.
Only one study where Tim and some other people went in the wild in WA and caught some snakes and tested, but they didn't test a lot. Like there was only small numbers. So good luck getting a well, if you have a scientific license, you could do a study like that.
It'd be interesting to see. I mean, no one's testing wild in big numbers, obviously, but is there certain things happening in the wild that are resistant to it? Is it UV light? Is it rainwater? Is there something, that is stopping the spread of it in the wild? If it's well, perfect husbandry in many cases, but
they are the perfect husbandry, and they don't come in contact with each other. Snakes in the wild don't hang out. They're not stuck together. They don't see each other. The only time they see each other is for mating, and that is it. You don't see snakes hanging out, not our species. It's not like garter snakes where you get a bunch of them all hanging out together.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And then Tim won't talk to individual private keepers. He'll only talk to vets. He won't. As a private keeper, you cannot send samples to him. You have to go through a vet. He does not have the time to speak to all you people.
Could you imagine if he did? His phone would never stop ringing. You're like, can I blame the guy? He's probably got enough vets contacting him.
I know in the States there are the home test kits. There's a $20 test in the States. You can swab your own animal, cloaca mouth, and send it in. But I mean, providing you can do the swab well, that would work. But like you say, the logistics of it for one guy doing it in the lab in WA is near impossible. So where we need the vets. We need the vets to take the accurate samples and make sure they get to the lab safely.
Yeah. So Troy asks in regards to the bulk testing, have any danger issues in cross contamination? If you send, like, say for example, I come in and go, I've got 5 snakes, Michelle, I want you to test them. You send all 5 over.
Yep.
What's the chance of that being bottled up together?
I use each snake when and use this technique so that swab touches the inside of that container, and I disinfect my hands between each snake. If your snakes have come from your collection where they're in the same rack, then your bags have all touched each other. So unless you're somehow have your snakes separate in the way you them to me, which I haven't seen anyone do that yet. But as far as the samples going, as long as they're a sterile sample that goes into the mouth of that snake, it doesn't touch anything else but the mouth of that snake and the inside of that container, then I'm pretty confident that Tim wouldn't be cross-contaminating them in the lab. He'd have a pretty good technique down there. Pretty standard practice.
And I was always giving Rob Johnson a hard time when I'd bring animals in that, yep, I'll be there at 8 o'clock, like first in, before anyone else was there. I know it must be hard for vets. I mean, how do you stop if you have an animal come in that's even with a respiratory problem or something? How do you protect that against the following reptile, appointment an hour later?
Spray everything. Spray every 10 after I've seen a reptile. Disinfect my hands.
Clear
That's
everything.
the best that we can do. Yeah.
It's always a battle. I know. I mean, obviously, it depends on how many rooms you've got. Rob would say, if you ever get a sick animal, you can shut down that room and go to another room to work in. But it's all based on size, I suppose. If you've got the workplace.
Yeah, it's difficult. I don't have much workplace where we are now, but when I have a new clinic, I'll have much more room and be able to do that much more effectively, which would be nice.
Yeah. How far away from the new clinic do you think you'll be?
So 2 k's up the road. So they're hoping it'll be done in December, depending on the rain.
Yeah.
So maybe
still at North Richmond.
Next year.
Yeah, still at North Richmond, or are you going up towards Kermond direction, or?
Oh no, North Richmond in the new estate.
Yeah. Excellent. Should be good. Obviously, a booming. I mean, everywhere. I guess reptiles are getting larger and larger, so specialized reptile vets, very well sought after. So certainly a growing market.
So many of us.
Yeah.
All the exotics.
Yeah. I remember David Villa once going back to where we started about what people spend on money, and he told me about a lady that had a pet rabbit, spent $3,000 getting this rabbit fixed because it was a pet bunny.
Easy.
Yeah, I mean, wow.
100%.
But that's a lot of animals.
People spend that much on anything. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. There you go. That's Corey. What if we as a community helped out with the I don't know if it'll fit all on there. No, it won't quite.
Yeah, I'll like I said, I'll email Tim tomorrow and ask him whether there's a way where if he got a really bulk lot over, so if a bunch of you with a big collections banded together to do like a big batch of testing, whether he could do it cheaper. But I don't like your chances, but I'll ask him.
Yeah,
and I'll let you know, Darren, if he does anything.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah, we can mention that in a future show. Yeah, I think I agree. I imagine if it, whether it's more efficient to test 20 to go as opposed to 2, if the testing is all the same, then
it's hard. It's hard too, because I like your idea of having a certificate that goes with the snake, but it's really hard because you test your snakes on the 1st of January, then on the 2nd of February you get another snake in, but on the 1st of January you tested all your snakes and your snakes are all negative and your hatchies are all negative, but then you've got another snake in and then another snake in, or you've done something else, or there's been some contamination or something. You can't give that certificate 6 months later so that snake's clear, right?
Yep.
And then even if you've taken your snake and it's tested clear, and then you've gone home and it's contaminated with another animal that you haven't tested, then that certificate doesn't mean anything. So in the ideal world is if you purchase a snake, like if you want to test your collection and your collection is negative, and then 6 months later you see your collection and it's negative, it's a pretty good chance that your collection is negative. It's not 100%, but it's pretty good, right? Then if you buy a new snake, you put that snake in quarantine and you test it when you get it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then if it's negative, then you test it when it's finished quarantine and it's negative, then that's your best practice that you can do to ensure that you don't have viruses. But nothing's 100%.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to protect themselves, like it's pointless. People have often said to me, can you test something before I get it? And I say, what's the point? It's in my collection anyway. So, every person's got to protect their own, and do their own testing. There's the absolute only way to know for sure is you tested it and quarantined it yourself away from everything. And that's the only way. Like my stuff stays in quarantine for way too long than what it needs to, but I know it's been in, it's tested, it's gone out, it's tested. I know for myself it's safe, and that's the only way to know. Testing is the answer. People keep saying that, I've quarantined stuff for a year. It doesn't matter. If you are not testing it in that year, you are still at risk.
Yeah, that's right. But not only that,
it's the best tool we have currently.
Yeah. And how hard is it to forge a bit of paper to say, oh, yes, it's been tested, here you go?
Yeah, is that snake?
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly
Yeah,
right. So
exactly.
as much as the idea is great in theory,
Yeah, you're better off
it
testing the
just
snake when
doesn't
you get
work.
it.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
right.
Yeah.
Protect yourself. That's it. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. We touched this before. Corey says, will there be home tests developed where breeders can send in their own swabs? I can't see that happening.
Maybe eventually, but the market in the US where they do that is huge for his market.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Elizabeth
all
Randall's
pictures
answered
of
that.
their collections.
Chiquito said, I emailed him and he said he won't test swabs from private collections, sadly. But you
No,
got to
he
understand.
won't.
Yep, I can't blame him either. Really, like how do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the good thing was that batch testing. I used to do that batch testing many years ago when you could do 5 or so, on one swab. And I think Tim said it was skewing his results for his own studies, that he wanted specific answers on species and results. So it was, that was his reasoning for not. Everyone said it was a cash grab. He just wanted to do single tests for everything. But obviously, if you're conducting a study to get answers, you need to know what species you're dealing with and where the problems are coming from. So,
and at the end of the day, we want answers. We want to have the best knowledge we can on these diseases for our animals, so we can move forward and we can get advice on what's the best thing to do. And the only way to do that is to do your studies correctly. And batching them all together doesn't really help that. That yellow fungal disease isn't nice. I wouldn't be surprised if that's gone from captivity to the wild, but we're not really sure where that originated from either. Sometimes diseases arrive or become apparent in a species and we don't know where it comes from. Has it mutated? Has it started from something else? Or has it been endemic? Or has it come from overseas? Sometimes we get those answers and sometimes we don't. I think there are some diseases that are endemic and then some that have been introduced and some that develop from having, we have certain viruses and bacterial diseases that happen due to pigs being farmed because there's a abnormal situation that happens. It's not the wild where animals are spread out. They're concentrated in small areas. So when you have animals concentrated, high stocking densities in a small area, then you're more likely to develop a disease. So we don't know. It's hard to get answers. Just like we don't know where COVID came from.
Yeah, but you take COVID when it first came out. What are we?
Exactly.
Three years in COVID. How many different strains are there developed in that short period of time?
Yeah, some viruses mutate. So is it something that's endemic that's mutated? We don't know.
Yeah. So we need social distancing in our reptiles.
Yeah. Put masks on them all.
What? So it means you can keep reptiles and not breed them, Darren? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, no. Goodness me. Okay, so we kind of touched on this, but I guess as a reptile vet, do you get many people bringing in exotics?
Sometimes. Not very often. Sometimes.
So
I'll help the animal, but I won't see any venomous exotics.
Well, put yourself at risk with that.
Yeah, that's just stupid.
No any venom.
I think you should have. No, exactly.
So what? Just jumping off the virus topic, what's a couple of the weirdest things you might have seen? Like maybe a python swallow something unusual, or a defect in a turtle, or like have you seen anything like
Nerf gun pellet in a bearded dragon?
A Nerf gun pellet.
Nerf gun bullet.
Yeah.
Bullets, big long ones.
Yeah.
Had another bearded. I've had a few foreign bodies in bearded dragons. Another one
everything.
ate someone put nice crystals in the cage.
Oh wow!
And
shiny
I
food.
even had one that had. Yep, I even had one that had a foreign body, so it had an obstruction in its stomach by eating a chunk of carrot that was in the cricket's cage. So they just opened the cricket container and it had carrot in there, and the bearded dragon ate the chunk of carrot and it got stuck. Couldn't digest it.
Wow.
Mm.
You would have crunched it up.
I see cancer in snakes and lizards, just as like we do in other animals. And sometimes we can fix them and sometimes we can't.
Yeah.
I've had unusual, this last breeding season, quite a few snakes with egg stuck, which I hadn't seen many in the years previous, and we saw quite a few in the last season. So I don't know whether there's anything, it's just coincidence, whether I'm just seeing more reptiles or whether it's got to do with the weather or the season or something. I don't And we actually, usually when we cut the eggs out, they're not normally viable. But I sexed some hatchlings the other day that actually survived after I did that surgery, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Because I've had a couple of snakes that were cut open, and I've never had eggs survive that process that weren't laid. So
no, it doesn't happen, and not from my knowledge, but yeah, this year there was some that lived, so it was kind of cool.
Yeah, excellent.
I know.
I know. You know, I've often told the story. I said the silver pepper story. How you know my poor old female that you came over and tested and took all the samples with all the tumours. Yeah,
it came back as cancer.
How often do you see cancer in reptiles? How many? Is it a common thing?
Not common, but we do see it, especially in older animals. Yeah. Something that can cause them to die, but not heaps. 90% of the problems I have in reptiles and people bring them in is because they don't look after them properly. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's something little. Sometimes it's due to the substrate, or them just doing something a little bit wrong. But the viruses have definitely become an issue as well.
There seems to be a bit of an enlarged heart. A few people recently posting stuff or sending pictures. It's becoming quite common.
Snakes get heart disease. Yeah, it's really hard to treat. I'm not sure if the medication we use in other animals would work in them, and it's hard to medicate them twice a day. I don't know how you medicate a snake twice a day orally. You can do it to other animals, so you can do it to rats and mice and ferrets and guinea pigs and rabbits, but even lizards. But snakes is tricky.
That'd be a nightmare.
They get all the same sort of things. They get like liver disease. They can get kidney disease. People are starting to diagnose things more because people are more happy to do blood work and do diagnostics like ultrasound and x-rays on reptiles more than they used to. Whereas back when I first became a reptile vet, everyone just wanted antibiotics and medication, whereas now people are starting to get a diagnosis, which is really nice.
Do you think a lot of the animals that come in are overweight? It seems to be a big issue that many people talk about.
Some are overweight, some not. It's just with every species, not just reptiles.
Dogs, cats, everything. They're all.
I'm not going to mention anything about fat dogs.
Yes, nothing about dogs. Kelpies shouldn't be overweight ever.
Put him on a diet. He's still a fat blob, lazy thing.
I had a bulldog the other day that was 48 kilos, and I told them how dangerous it was, and their dog lost 1.5 kilos in a week when they dieted it correctly. So it can be done pretty quick.
God.
Just starve your dog. They don't care.
They can't feed themselves, luckily.
Our dog doesn't understand the word starvation. What's that? But we've reduced all the food, so I think she's definitely a little bit lighter, but probably could do with a little bit less. Yeah,
take you to the gym, Daz. Throw on the treadmill next to you and get it going.
I need to get the gym myself. Bloody back's out at the moment, so I'm waiting for my chiropractor appointment to get that realigned so I can get in and stop limping around like a spazzo. But anyway, enjoys it all. Me and people bringing exotics.
Substrates. But I don't know what a legless lizard is. Sorry, Dylan. What's a legless lizard?
Picopods.
Or does he mean legless? Huh? What does he mean legless lizards?
Oh,
I think so.
Probably picopods, legless lizards, like Burton's legless lizards and stuff like that.
They're not very commonly kept as pets. I've never tested any.
Maybe he's talking about Legolas in Lord of the Rings.
I know, that's what I saw.
Ding!
I'm assuming that means legless. I don't know. No, I haven't tested any. I hardly ever see them as a pet. I think I've seen like 1 or 2 ever. Usually just in like zoos and stuff. Main substrates I have problems with. They recommend that turtle 0 substrate. A lot of turtles that get sick, it's from the pebbles and it harbors shit. So I recommend that your turtles are in a tank with nothing else. And in snakes and lizards, we always want everyone wants their cage to look pretty and look nice. But if you get parasites, the parasites are going to be in the substrate. So if you ever diagnose parasites in a lizard or a snake, then you should have them on paper or paper towel while you're treating them at least. Anything that produces dust isn't good for respiratory disease. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have much of a, like, what not to do or what to do. Depends on your animal too. Like, some of them will eat the substrate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Use with
because a
caution.
lot of
Seen
people
sand
at
impactions.
different times saying certain coconut husk and certain types of
Yeah.
substrates were having mite problems. I mean, I don't know how long can a reptile mite? Obviously, reptile mites are species specific. So, how long can a mite live for
They
in
are.
a bag of substrate?
I'd be surprised if it came in your bag of substrate. I would be. I won't say it's impossible, but I would be surprised if it actually came in the substrate. Because why is the substrate getting made at a place that there's reptiles with mites?
Right.
Like, it doesn't seem to make sense. But mites can be hard to kill in your collection. You have to treat everyone. You can't just treat one snake that has mites and not treat all your snakes. And I've done it when I've had 20. It's a pain in the ass. But I treated all of them and got rid of it in one treatment. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done it. I found my little trick way of knocking them out. Normally guarantee they're gone within 2 to 3 weeks, but luckily I haven't had to worry about that for at least 6 or 7 years since the last time probably 10 or 12 years now. Jeez.
Yeah.
When you start thinking, oh yeah, is that back then? I'm like, hang on, that was before I even went to the warehouse.
Yeah. Person bioactive enclosures. I really like bioactive enclosures. Tom's set 2 up for our green tree snakes that he has. I think they're really pretty. I think that if your animals are tested for parasites before you put them in, then you shouldn't have parasites in there. So it should be okay. Yeah, I think they become really popular overseas too.
Nice. They certainly look, some of the bioactive enclosures certainly look really
they
good.
Look pretty. Yeah, they look really good. Yeah.
What's the obviously
but,
Tom's just got a couple set up recently, has he? He hasn't had them for a while. I was just curious as what's the actual maintenance on them?
He's had the snakes for a while now. He made them bioactive maybe 6 months ago.
Okay.
And you know, Tom, he's got insects everywhere and all sorts of stuff in different cages. So I don't know. But he's got different layers in there, and the plants, he's just changed which lights he has so that the plants will grow nicely in there. But the green tree snakes seem to be going pretty well. They're eating really well. They're eating mice, dead mice, which is nice.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's good.
They put on weight. So he's going to try and breed them this year, which is cool.
Oh, nice. It's something you don't see very much of,
No, he's got the blue ones, so it's nice. Yeah.
Oh, nice. They're beautiful, blue phase ones. Yeah, you don't see them.
Popular now too. Very popular.
Yeah, it's always been a feeding issue.
And they're quite quiet. They're hard to feed. Yeah. Tom's very patient.
Apparently getting them to feed is my patience is about that much. It's gone out the door years ago. Oh, interesting.
Obesity, underfeeding. Don't feed pinkies and fuzzies to your snakes for more than you need to. Get them onto something with a better bone. They get problems. They don't have enough calcium. There's no snake in the wild that eats pinkies or fuzzies for a couple of years, ever. Like, that doesn't happen. We want to try and replicate the natural diet in our animals. Our animals in the wild eat adult animals. They don't eat babies, except for asperities, I guess, that go down burrows and family of rodents or something. But they're an exception. So I think that as soon as you get them, people are scared to feed too big an item. And you can kill feeding it something too big, but that doesn't happen very often. So you need to progress them. Even an Antiviral, how long do you need to feed it a pinky for? Not very long.
Nope.
Like, they grow pretty damn fast.
Yep. 8 or 10 feeds and move on.
Yep, that's it. I mean, just tapping on this is something you often see. A lot of people post up a photo of a snake, and you immediately think, oh, it's obese, it's too big, keep it small, don't feed it much. Yeah. And I always say, like, Brent will tell you, I said Morelia specifically, I'm like, they're designed to eat a mammalian prey. That'd be the bulk of their diet, possums or whatever, maybe the odd bird here or there. But they're not going to those animals and saying, oh, how old are you? Have you been going to the gym?
Exactly.
Do you have a tumor? Are you fat? Are you about to die? They don't care. And in fact, there's been, from memory, reported cases of you're actually eating roadkill. So,
I wouldn't be surprised in snakes or pigs. They'll eat anything.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
opportunity.
This whole keep them lean and keep them small, I've never agreed to. Some of my best male breeders are huge, big things. Like not fat or obese, just good, solid, healthy pythons.
I think I always tell people, as hatchlings and young snakes, I don't care if you feed them a couple of times a week. You should always feed them a decent meal. Don't just feed them something tiny. Lots of pet owners are scared of feeding an item too big and think that the snake can't actually eat it. I'm like, no, they can eat it if it wants to. Like our olives, we've got adult olives and they get fed maybe once a month, but they eat a big meal like once a month, and they're not skinny at all. But I rarely see snakes that are underfed. Rarely. I see obese snakes, but I rarely see them that I'm thinking you need to feed your snakes more. But I do see people that feed the wrong food items. When
you say feed the wrong food items, what would you?
Yeah, like so you have like a diamond python that's 3 years old, and all it's eat is like this person says like
just incorrect food.
No, feed it a rat, please.
It seems to be a common thing, even with people that have bought snakes.
It doesn't necessarily make the snake skinny, but it makes it not have a complete diet.
Because they need all the all the vitamins and minerals from the heart, liver, the kidneys, the bones, that stuff.
It's the bones. I think a lot of
calcium.
I don't see that many green tree pythons anymore, but for a while I saw heaps with prolapses, and it's because they were eating fuzzies and all like pinkies, and there was no calcium in it. That was my take on it anyway.
I guess a lot of people that are worried about the size of food, maybe mix it up a bit. I'm very random with food. With hatchies, they might get a fuzzy rat, and then the next week a velvet rat, and then a hopper rat. It's very mixed bag. So if you're particularly worried about feeding a big food item all the time, just don't have to go the same size food every time. Just mix it up. Just give them a variety of foods, and they'll process it all the same.
There's heaps of foods available these days. It's easy to get quails and other stuff too.
That raises another topic.
I think birds are good.
Yeah, I've always heard that birds are good. For example, I was feeding one of the coastals many years ago, a big old boiler quail once upon a time, and the feathers got caught in the teeth. And I could hear the banging in the enclosure, and I'm like, what the bloody hell's that? So I've gone out to have a look, and it couldn't get it out, and it couldn't swallow it down. The feathers had actually caught around the tooth. They ended up pulling out like 3 teeth.
That's pretty bad.
It's not a common thing. So I don't feed birds because I don't want to feed something and cause a problem. And obviously rats are convenient for me. But I've also heard a lot of people saying, they cut, they feed quails, they cut the beaks off. They've had injuries from claws and damage on the insides and that. Have you seen any of that sort of stuff?
We feed roosters to our olives, like adult roosters. I've never had an issue. I guess an issue can always happen with any prey item. I had a snake swelling but with biopsies, and I thought that maybe it got damaged when I ate something, but I don't think it's the case because there was nothing there.
Like my coastal boy. One with my one I brought out with the fatty throat.
Sometimes I think that it happens, but I've never seen one stuck where there's actually evidence of it. It's hard to say.
Nice.
It's a hard one. Chicken legs. I used to feed chicken legs to my snakes as a cheap feed.
I suppose it's a varied diet, as long as they're getting a variation in it. I just stick to rodents because
I'd feed it every meal, but maybe once a month I'd feed them some something. Some snakes would eat anything. My womas would eat chicken necks.
I've heard of people feeding them drumsticks and all sorts of stuff. I think I'd rather eat a drumstick than buy a rat. So obviously coming into breeding season.
It's a hard one. So if you're not going to breed the snakes, don't hibernate them, is what I've always said. Because from my own experience, when snakes come out of hibernation in spring, that's when I see 6 snakes, always. always my highest number of snakes sick is after hibernation. Some people don't hibernate them properly. You guys are really experienced and know what you're doing. You can't hibernate a snake in a shoebox in your wardrobe. It doesn't really work, but I've had people do that and wonder why they're sick. I think you got to remember that when snakes are in the wild, when it's cold, they're not sitting on top of the tree unless they're there to get warm from the sun. They're usually hiding somewhere. So they're in a tree hollow, or, you know, they've gone somewhere that's sheltered. So even though the outside temperature is 14, if you go out herping when it's 14 degrees, do you see snakes?
No.
Not generally.
Rare.
Right? You don't. Yeah, exactly. So they're hibernating somewhere that's probably a little bit warmer, or they've cooled their body down to a certain temperature or it's static. I don't know how many studies have been done on that to see where they actually go and put trackers on them. I helped someone do a study when on broadheadeds, but I don't know if people have done many on like Morelias and stuff. But you know, we don't see them. I go out bushwalking in the winter and I never see hardly any reptiles. So they're somewhere hiding. They're not in an aviary. So I think that we need to provide supplemental heating to our animals in winter, even in, you know, when it gets dropped below 14. I think that's too cold personally. I'm sure other people have different opinions. We keep our olive pythons. They're kept outside all the time. We have an incubated, a fully insulated box with a heat panel on the roof that's thermostatically controlled with a little hole that they can go in and out of. So that's always heated all the time. It doesn't get heated very much in summer, obviously, but in winter it's always on. So they've always got somewhere to stay. And I hardly ever see them out in winter. They're only out if it's a sunny, bright day. Otherwise, they're in their box all the time.
Yep,
so
that's
I
right.
think that if you have them outside, that you need to provide supplemental heating unless you're in Cairns or, you know, north enough where it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's always the same. You know, this sort of thing is a question I get asked a lot, and I'm sure you do too, Brent. You know, about, how do you cool? What do you do? And I'm like, keep your daytime. My daytime temperatures never change. I always maintain nice hot daytime temperatures, and I allow them to cool. And I always say, you know, if your room gets down to 18 degrees, it's getting cool enough. You know?
Oh no. Yeah, and the air, they do know. It's not just, you got to change your day length, which is really important. I don't think you need to cool them down that much. And that's some from my personal experience. My snakes bred when I didn't want them to breed. I didn't change anything. I didn't cool them down. And next thing I had a clutch of coastals. I'm like, why? Why are you breeding? But so
it's because you got them in the same enclosure, Michelle.
Yeah, that's right. They were too big. I didn't have enough room. You saw how many snakes I had.
Yeah.
But I think that
I remember that.
certain species obviously need to be hibernated and their success rate is much higher. But I think day length is important, and I think that they can tell that it's winter. I think that there's other things that happen.
Well, I often
like
use
pressure gradients and stuff.
I normally use a reference of like when you go camping in the middle of winter, you can stand in front of the fire and you're nice and warm, you know, in front of the fire. Yeah. But you know, back here it's freezing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like even though you're hot here, you're going, oh geez, how good's that? You know it's still freezing there. And it's the same thing, you know, despite it being a nice warm basking temperature, they still know it's cold.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I'll probably only save another 5 minutes or so because my baby will want me.
Yeah.
But if you want to go through general like health or another topic another time, I'm happy to come on.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely do some more.
Ask
did you have any other questions there, Brent? Or just kind of talking about general health
I think
anyway?
Yeah, we've pretty much covered the virus thing pretty good. It's been good information. It's always good to get the facts, you know, than the my friend said or my you know mate's vet recommends this. So it's good to get some actual facts.
Yeah,
it's nice to see people testing. I understand how disheartening it will be for lots of people. You don't know if you have it if you don't test. But if you do test, it's a really hard situation to be in of what to do with your collection, especially if you're relying on that for an income. So it's tough.
I guess it's easier for some to be in denial than face reality.
Yeah. I think that the industry will change. I think it will be nice to have people test animals when they buy them. I think that's ideal, to quarantine and test after you purchase an animal, not to test and give a certificate with an animal, you know, before you buy it. yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what will happen in the next 3 to 5 years or so.
Yeah, well, it's come a long way since they first started doing it. I remember, when Tim was doing all the research years ago, and it's like it's progressing further and further, and the hobby's certainly growing, exponentially. So, the demand's growing, but there's still so many unknowns.
Yeah, I'll send him an email and see what he says, but I'd be surprised if he, does much unless he ends up doing a big study that involves a bunch of keepers and stuff. But for some of you guys have lots of things, so could be an interesting thing to do. But the funding's hard. The money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So before you go, Michelle, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them, and where can they find you at?
Just email me. We have a Facebook page and have a website. I'm not sure if the contact thing on the website's working. I've had some issues. I have to change the website over completely. But just better off emailing it, just attention to me, and I'll be able to answer your questions.
Yep, and that's
otherwise, you can come see me.
Veterinary Hospital at Richmond.
Yeah. And it's North Richmond Vet at hotmail.com. It's the easiest one.
Yep, there you go. So if anyone's looking to get their animals checked or treated or tested or whatever, go see Michelle. Great person, great service, and look after your critters.
Thanks.
So we'll probably hang around for a little bit more. Might talk about the show, Brent, quickly for a little bit. But Michelle has to go.
Nice.
The voice of having little young
Duties.
children. Mum duties.
Maybe a mum.
Yeah. Thanks heaps, Michelle, for dropping in. We'll definitely do it again.
Right.
Thanks, Michelle. See ya.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
There we go.
Straight from the horse's mouth, though.
Straight from the horse's mouth. Yeah. Very informative, very interesting. So hopefully that helps a lot of people out. And obviously, a few people watch that over the weeks to come on YouTube and stuff like that. But it's good to actually hear the answers to the questions a lot of people are not sure about, transfer and quarantine and all that sort of stuff. It pretty much reiterates what we recommend anyway. But it's nice to hear it from the vet.
Great to hear that she's saying there's a lot more testing now. I hate to think that there's more virus out there. Well, I feel like there's more ever, but maybe it's just a fact people are actually testing. So we're getting, people are knowing that there's viruses instead of just, I've got a sick snake, I've banged it on the head, So it's good that I remember many, many years ago, talking with Rob Johnson, he was just saying the testing is just not happening. There is very little people testing. I'd take him sick snakes that I'd bought in, quarantine, test these for me. And Rob would say, like, what are you testing for? The only one testing, like no one else is even testing anything. It's
but like Michelle said, it's your own peace of mind and it's security for your own collection. Yeah,
that's what I said. I got too much to risk. And now, once you go so far down a track, if I don't test something now, it's pointless having tested everything beforehand. One hand I look at it, you spent many thousands of dollars on testing, and I think it's a waste of money. It's that's my first thought every time: negative test, waste of money testing. But any one of those animals could have wiped out the entire collection. So is any one new animal worth everything you've got? Never.
That's exactly right. Yes, it's
the only way to know.
But it's not the cost of the outlay of testing one animal; it's the loss of losing 10. Or 20
or everything,
5
or whatever your collection is, so
exactly.
So, and people often say to me, I've got 5 snakes, should I test? I say, look, if you're happy and one's sick and you lose a lot, that's sad, but is it worth testing? Probably not, it's unless they're your pets and you love them to death and you want to be sure, that you can give a good life to all of them, then go ahead. Everyone's got to make their own risk assessment on, what they test and, what they're comfortable to lose if something bad did happen. So,
and, you've seen it yourself, Brent. There's some people that spent a lot of money buying animals and, in short periods of time. And you got to ask yourself, how you just can't quarantine that many. You're buying 10 animals now or 15 animals now, spend lots of money. You can't quarantine from 15 different people. So
if you got 15 different quarantine areas, sure. 15 different days of the week to do each one.
or you bring in so many, you quarantine it, and you've got to do that in stages, in sections. Like I said, I bought some in this year. I don't think I've bought anything for 5 years, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. Whatever it is,
because you're tired us.
Now, yeah, pretty much didn't have money to spend. But now I'll buy a block. I'll get some animals tested. I'm going to go see Michelle on Wednesday, just get some quarantine stuff tested, make sure it's okay. And then it'll probably sit there. I've got nothing else coming in. There's no more. Sorry, I've got one more animal coming in, and that's it. That'll be locked down, and I'll be locked down for probably can't see myself buying anything for another 4 or 5 years. So,
I guess that's the joys you get. Once you've got what you need, as if that's ever possible. Everyone dreams about closing their doors. I've done it 5 times in the last 10 years. That's it. No more snakes. 2 years later, come home from an expo with a snake. Daz gave me a snake the other day. Take this thing home. It's like, yeah, no worries. Quarantine goes again. So I got some snakes off Faye last year, I think.
Last year?
It's still at work. So, like there's you never have everything. I guess you've got to just follow the practices. You have to quarantine. You have to test to be sure. So there's just no other way, sadly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, you got to work. I generally like to try to buy in blocks and have a break for a couple of years. It's going to cost me quite a bit of money to get the few snakes tested, but, what risk? When you're size of the collection I have, it's not worth buying something in and not quarantining, one mistake.
Yeah, throw Elizabeth's question up there. If you were to buy 5 animals from 5 different breeders, would you quarantine all those animals in the same quarantine? If you are prepared to have a one-in, all-in policy, that if one of those is sick, likely all of them are going to be sick. Sure, it's your risk, but you need to be prepared to wipe out all 5. If one pops up, good chance all are going to be bad if you've cross-contaminated across all those animals. So if you can have 5 different quarantine areas, sure, but quarantine means an entire setup. It's feeding tongs, it's tubs for that, it's cleaning equipment, it's gloves, it's everything you need is in that one area, and if you do that area, you do not go to another area. That's it. You are done. It's the last thing you do, and it's game over for that day.
Yep, right down to the tub I defrost the mice and rats in.
Absolutely. Everything. Like it needs to be like if it's in another building, it's even better, because there's no chance I'll just run down to the other room and grab this, like if you've got a complete
tweezers, I'll grab those ones from there,
Yep, nothing changes. Even like everything I have in this room is just stuff in this room. Nothing goes to other rooms, to the adult room, to the yearling room, to inside, to my quarantine at another building. There's nothing is ever mixed. And if you're good at quarantine, it is possible, but you have to be perfect. And it's very hard. That's why they say do it last, because you're doing all your normal animals first. Your most high risk stuff is quarantine. You do that last, so there's no chance that you'll go then from those animals back to your normal collection. So
and also that it's not necessarily just the risk of losing 5 animals. It's also the financial gamble. So you might buy 5 animals, might cost you $1,000, $1,500. You might be prepared to lose that, but those 5 animals might have cost you 20 grand or 25 grand or whatever the case may be. Yep. So that's a far bigger risk. If you're going to spend big dollars on a high-end animal, I certainly wouldn't want to be buying other animals in from other areas unless you're prepared to lose that. So, if you're buying in a snake for $300-400, buying a couple and, that's your happy gamble, that's fine. But, I'll tell you now, if I went to Brent's place and went, yeah, geez, give me one of those, such and such and such and such for $8,000 or $6,000 or whatever, I wouldn't be buying anything else in. It did go in the quarantine by itself, because that's a lot of money, and I'm not prepared to lose one animal.
Risk.
Yeah, because I decided to buy, I'm going to buy albino granite bloody jag posset something or other, and then go, oh, gee whiz, I really like that marble children's python. I'll buy that as well, and put a $500 snake with an $8,000 snake and take that gamble.
Yeah,
so
it's risk
perspective.
Assessment. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So,
and nobody knows, like it doesn't know. You've got to test everything. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It's nobody is 100% safe. I reckon I'd nearly say I've spent as much money as anybody in the country testing stuff. I bought in everything for a decade. but I can still be, Rob Johnson said to me, you're 99, percent safe. No one's going to tell you you're 100%. The testing, I don't think, there's probably caused a stir, but I don't think the testing is ever going to be 100%. I think they're always going to cover their butt with it's 99% for one test, it's 99.5% two tests done. So it's still possible you can test something and it says it's negative, and you can still get a positive animal through there. So
definitely.
I mean, if it's positive, it's positive though. People talk about false positives. Well, yeah, in the event that, like Michelle talked about, just on the body of an animal, possible. But I think if you get something that's positive, you're pretty much in the shit. Like if it's positive, it's generally going to be positive from a swab.
Yep, and if it's positive, there's obviously something there somewhere that has caused it to be positive. So there's obviously an issue there to start with. So it's something you've got to be wary of. Stephen Johnson say here, off topic, sharp egg laying boxes. Yeah, probably something we could do soon. Maybe getting up towards starting to lay eggs. Yeah, yep.
Yep, definitely. We might start doing a couple of little videos as we move through the season at different times of starting to pair stuff, doing intros and laying eggs, setting up lay boxes, all that stuff. I think we'll try and get a couple of little, shorter, quick videos on how we both do it. So
yeah, I've got to start. It's like I feel like last season's not finished yet. I just feel like I haven't even got over last season, and wife says to me last night, I'm running around because I had both my kids' birthdays, so it's been out for dinner here and out for this and everything, and I'm like, 1 o'clock in the morning last night, what are you doing? Oh, just combating a couple of boys and pairing this and pairing that, and just doing a couple of trial introductions. So
I just turned my incubator off literally 2 weeks ago. I had some goanna eggs that got scattered that I thought might live, and they sort of just went to poo, as I thought they would. They weren't really set up right for it. So, I feel like I just turned it off, and now I'm pairing snakes 2 weeks later. It's like, hang on a minute, I haven't had a break yet, and it's the worst for, bigger breeders, yourself does. It's the worst time of year. You're at maximum load 3 months ago. We're sort of just getting off the hook now that you've got numbers down a little. It feels like I'm only in the feeding room, for 4 hours instead of 6 hours. So
I finally emptied my incubator.
Hey,
after the show.
Yep.
So at the show, sold snakes at the show, and it was enough to make enough room to clear the incubator out. And I'm like, finally. So when was that? Two weeks ago.
Yeah, you're back to absolute capacity then. Well done.
So I'm back to absolute capacity. Yeah. I mean, there's a few critters that are waiting on leaving, but yeah, I'm like, oh boy. So I haven't even looked at this season. Obviously, I've already got a couple of ants locked up and carpets locked up and stuff, and I'm like, oh. So yes, there'll be a I've been very busy. I've been cleaning and actually taking photos for a change, because
I have noticed. Yes, finally
trying to get on top of stuff. So project by project, I thought I would start to try and share. So it's like, take a snake out, put it in that tub, clean it, come back, try to take a photo, and put it away, because I'm terrible. I'm hopeless. I'm lazy when it comes to that sort of stuff. Half the time, the whole, I don't have the patience for the whole set it up, and like these people that get their lumps of timber out and the black backgrounds and all the lighting and sit there for 3 days waiting for that perfect pose. Credit to you. I do not have the patience. I've tried to, a little cup on top and take it off and then take photos. So I found it works.
2 seconds.
I found it works for me. I take a little container. I don't know. There's not many. Little container. I put the snake in it, and I just put a Chinese container lid over top so they can't get out. And then I go clean the tub. I came back. I lift it off. If they're sitting still, I take a photo. If not, they try to come out. I go back.
Yeah, I use the little Antiviral hides and small hides. If you get 2 and sort of stack them opposites on top of each other, there's no hole anymore, and you just sort of bang that over the top of them. But you got like 1 second. You lift that off, and it's like throw it and just snap. Get as many pictures as you can, and then it's all over very, very soon after. Yeah, so I'm getting there. So it's point, click, 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 click. What you do? Blurry, blurry. Oh, that one looks all right. Yeah, there's one I can crop and get something. But there's one with the head missing because it's out this side of the tub. There's another one with a blurry shot over here. Yeah. So how was the expo? That was you wanted to have a quick touch on the expo?
Yeah, I just thought we'd see how it went. A few people were. I actually spoke to Mr. South the other day, Cole. A few people were happy that we did the live feed and the walk around. So I think that was a good thing.
We just had time for a change. We had our finger out and had 5 minutes before the doors opened, which was good.
Yeah. I think it was because I had 7 hours to set up. That was gave me time. 3 weeks of preparation and set up. But yeah, that was good. The show itself was good. Certainly a lot of people coming through. I don't know if anyone apparently got pulled down, but Luke Netheim from Australian Herpiculture podcast actually had a drone there. And
really?
Yeah, he showed some footage outside. I was surprised at how big a queue was. Yeah, it's all about past such and such. I'm like, I don't know where that is. I have no idea how far that is.
There was a COVID station around the bend at the end of the car park, and someone said it was past that and to the other end of the car park. It was, if you drove straight in when you drove in, just keep driving for 500 meters. That was the end of the line.
Yeah, so it was. But apparently, even though he'd asked to use the drone, apparently, what I heard, you had to pull it down because you're not supposed to use a drone near
Public
people
areas.
or over people or something like that, which
Privacy.
I didn't know about, and obviously he didn't know either. So, but yeah, it was a good day. I sold a few animals. I believe you sold a few as well, Brent.
Great day, mate. Illawarra Herb Society, fantastic job. Hats off to them. Other than the Mother's Day calendar, which not the ideal day, and it certainly showed in the crowds. It was fantastic early from open at 10 till 12, absolutely pumping. It was insane. It was
very good.
Probably equal to one of the busiest mornings, in an expo. It was just flat out. But after the lunchtime came, everyone obviously did the right thing. Everyone ran off to go and have lunch with mum and do what they needed to do. So it was nice for us because we sort of got pumped early and we had a bit of time to dick around in the arvo and go and talk to some people and socialise a little bit, which is nice because we didn't get that luxury at Penrith. We sort of got pumped flat out, and then next thing we know it was over. But a great day, it was good. It's always nice to sell some animals. It relieves the less cleaning, less feeding load, and it's good to catch up with some people. A few people, Luke Lovey come down from far north Queensland. There's some guys, Darren came up from Boswell from SA. People travelled a really long way, and it's great to see that. It's disappointing other states don't have the expos out there, so it's good to see people make an effort to come to New South Wales for it.
Yeah, I think having that, we said about it before with having the expos too early, having that time frame. Unfortunately, I spoke to Joe Payne, who organised the show, and it was the only date available. And understandably, it was probably the only date available because it was Mother's Day. So it was either then or none. So it is what it is. Obviously a bit more planning for that next season or maybe later on in the year.
It's been Mother's Day before, at least once too, and it hasn't. It's hard to say how much effect it really has. I'm sure it has some effect, but saying that, it's a 90% result instead of 100%. Potential.
Well, I spoke to a few people in the weeks after to it, and there was a few that weren't able to go because of Mother's Day. So it obviously has some effect, whether I just happen to speak to the only 2 people in the country that didn't go because of it, or, whether that's there's a lot more.
It was like 10 out of 10. The timing of year, outstanding. May time expo. When my display was full, I can't remember ever having an entire everything full and snakes in tubs still behind the counter. I know Daz had a lot of snakes behind the counter. There's just so much ready by the time May comes that everything's there. That's what I was trying to tell a lot of people that are unsure about, buying a first snake. They don't know what they want. Come to an expo, and especially that one in May, because you'll go and see 20 different breeders, and they'll all have everything they've got is going to be there. So it's a great time to see a huge variety of all types of reptiles, not just pythons. There's everything there. So
and especially the last season, I don't know about you, but everything was such a late breed for me. Like just everything went late. So a lot of my stuff was hatching later than normal. So by the time you get to February, if you're feeding once a week, and you feed over 2 months, you've only got 8 feeds. And, that's not necessarily the best way of doing it. That's not necessarily the best time to sell something. You want to make sure that it's feeding bulletproof. You want to make sure it's feeding really well.
Yep.
So,
I was just looking at my board. I had stuff hatching in February. I had some of those Murray clutches late end of January. Bradley hatching into February. When there's an expo in February or March, none of those animals are going to an expo. So May was great. So congrats to the society. It's good. There are a lot of volunteer helpers that make it a really good day, that give up their time to go there and make sure everything runs smoothly. So hats off to them. Very good job. Penrith was fantastic as well. So the Herp societies did a very good job. It's good to see. I know in COVID times it's tough, but they got it done. And hopefully a few of the other societies see how successful these were and get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, I hope so. Certainly COVID had a big impact. I mean, having 5 shows a year was pretty good. Obviously we haven't seen that for a while, so having the 2 this year was great. Another one towards the end of the year would be awesome. And hopefully
talk about it. Let's hope so.
Yeah, and maybe next year we'll get back to having 3. On
Central Coast would be
Central Coast one. Yep. Yeah. Someone I spoke the other day was talking about the one they used to have up at Newcastle, the Newcastle Jockey Club up there. That was always a great show to go to as well. But obviously that society all fell apart up there a long time ago. So,
perhaps another society could push up that way too, It doesn't have to be exactly in their backyard. But
yeah, it was kind of close enough to Sydney, being a couple of hours away. But it was enough to draw people from a little bit further north down. And obviously people from Sydney would still go up. You get obviously a lot of the Central Coast would go up. So it was they were always good shows. So having that South Coast couple in Sydney, because obviously a bigger, denser population, and then having those ones up there.
Central Coast. And Paul Macquarie was always a good show. It's a shame that one sort of died out a little bit. It didn't probably get supported that well. And now that's not there, people miss it and want it back, I'm sure. So maybe that society could have another go now. We're hopefully past this the COVID restrictions.
Yeah, that was always nice to get up there. You see up with Dave Raptor a few times and stay at Bonnie Hills in the caravan park, and go out there for 3-4 days, 5 days sometimes. It was like an excuse to just get away from it.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I think it was only 1 year I didn't get up there. I think other than that I was up there most of them. But yeah, it's nice to get away. So hopefully I have some more. But anyway, I suppose that's about it. Miss any questions? I mean, it was awesome having Michelle on here to talk about all that veterinary type stuff. So hopefully people will watch that and see it over time.
Expo at Stanhope Gardens. They did do that breeders one. Is that down near the one down near the M4?
Yeah, down near my place. Yeah, not far from me. Yeah, that's Adrian Hammond's one. He was having that. That was supposed to be on, I think, was it the week before?
Week before Penrith.
Yep. Yeah, but we didn't hear anything. We ended up emailing Adrian going, "Hey, mate, what's going on?" And he just goes, "I've not enough interest, so I'm not doing it." So that was it. End of story. So whether he just left the run a little bit too late or just not enough contact with people or...
Yep, a lot of breeders like myself were slack and hadn't said, yes, I'm 100% coming, when always definitely were going. So,
but it was rather short notice too, because it was literally like 3 or 4 weeks. There wasn't much time frame to do it. So
keep going, but hopefully it will kick on. So it's always good the more expos, the better. Certainly if we can get them spread out across the year little bit better. I understand not everybody has animals still in July or August, September. But a smaller show somewhere. They used to have that one down at Penrith. Hawkesbury Hurst put it on, just a little breeders' day. It was just not so much a big commercial thing, just a little 10, 12 breeders selling some hatchies later in the year. Worked fantastic for a little mini expo. So
and I know the herp societies are talking to each other a bit more now, which is good. Maybe they always have done, but they're actually now trying to spread it. Because I remember going back you know, you could go down to the Vic Hertz Society Expo and see that. I've been down there a couple of times, once years ago, to see Greg Maxwell talk on chondros when he came out. A couple of times I've been down there, and my niece did a breeder conference down there once on one of the expo weekends or something or other. So down for that. So there's it's nice when you've got, you know, an expo here, and then there's a few weeks and there's a different one, and in a few weeks there's a different one. So if you actually want to go and support these shows interstate, you can do, and it's not hard. You know, you can take a Monday off work, drive down Saturday, you know, see the show Sunday, drive home Monday. You know, a couple of nights accommodation and everything. It's not overly expensive if you want to go down and have a look, and it's always good to, you know, we see all these people that come online on Facebook and all that chat, and it's nice to actually meet the people and name to a face and have a good old talk. I've always enjoyed it, but
it's so weird that it's so often, you know, like we've talked about going interstate, you know, go down to VHS and stuff, and how often does it end up VHS on the same weekend as Penrith or something, you know? Like,
or it's the weekend before or the weekend after, you know? And
it's just crazy that one expo a year, they're on the same date, same weekend, you know? It's odd, but a few people saying Gaz and Chug, you know, looking at doing expos, Lithgow, Wagga. Mate, I'd love to support Going Bush if we could get a small, you know, it could be in a school hall, could be in a scout hall, could be in anything where we could get half a dozen breeders and a supplier of product to go somewhere and do a small Sunday show somewhere. I'd be all for it. You know, I'd be happy to travel to do a 4 or 6 hour show somewhere. I guess you'd need a herp society as such. You'd need some way of Parks and Wildlife approving it. It's not, I think, super easy just to slap together a show. Certainly doesn't. I can't just say, hey, we're going to Wagga, meet in the park at lunchtime where we'll bring our snakes to sell. There's a lot of legalities and planning and things that need to go into it. We'll be at Macca's getting a Big Mac at 12 till 4 o'clock this Sunday at Lithgow.
Yeah, have a display set up over the package.
We'll have a few hatchies to look at. There's a lot of planning, and, you know, obviously the legal things and the safety things and public liabilities and all sorts of things that go into having these events. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things that need to work. You know, Daz and I have talked about, you know, trying to organise expos and at different places. So it's something that we'll try and push together plans on over the next year or two, that we can go places. You know, like it'd be nothing better to go bush and try and support more people who are into the reptile scene.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it would be good, something out west, you know, but I suppose it's like anything. It's demand. The further you go out, the population becomes less. So, you know, it's Penrith's good, probably. You know, maybe Lithgow, don't know. Having one Penrith, and then maybe like even to have one more Central Sydney would be good.
Yeah, like Homebush, I think would be unreal. You know, like if you get centre of Sydney, it should attract from all over the place. Like Sydney's such a huge place, and to travel from one side to the other, you know, it's quicker to go to Newcastle sometimes than it is to go to the airport. So
yeah. So, but it's all fun. But yeah, it's on the card. Something we'll look at doing.
Certainly, I think up the coast, down the coast, you know, there's some pretty big centres, you know, out there that would certainly support it.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, I suppose that's all for me. You got anything else you wanted to chat about, Brent, before we lock it down?
No, mate, I think that's it. We'll save that for this show. We'll kind of keep it on track. So we've been going for an hour and 50. That's probably long enough.
Yep.
So plenty happening out there in the herp world this week. I'm sure maybe we'll have a show next week, talk about some of this new mutations and all the talk on Facebook the last few days. It's all very exciting. So lots of drama. It's I don't know why people can't just be happy we've got new things, you know. But anyway, everyone's got a story. But let's all remember, we all keep snakes in boxes. All our snakes and reptiles came from somewhere. And it wasn't out of a Wheaties box once. They all came from the bush sometime.
All coming from the bush sometime. Yep, that's it. You know.
Not that I'm saying it's a right to go poaching. I'm definitely not for poaching and taking things out of the bush, you know, but it's where did albino Darwins come from? Where did Blondie just arrive from, you know?
Marble Children's, where'd they come from?
They all came from somewhere. It's
I think
great for the hobby. So it's good. Anything new for the hobby is fantastic. It's good to see.
I think the biggest difference is you drive along the road and you stop to get the snake off the road. And if you took that snake home, okay, because chances are if you didn't run over it, the car behind you was, or the one going the other way was, and that's one thing. But I think when you go out in the bush and you're searching and hunting and taking everything you find, that's different.
And legally, you're not even allowed to move that snake off the road.
Nope.
Legally, you're saving its life or, relocating an animal. You're not allowed to. You can't touch wildlife.
Yeah. And let's face it, most of us nowadays, why would I want anything from... If I was driving down the road and there was a pied carpet python crossing the road, okay, but there's probably not a person on the planet that wouldn't want that snake.
Yeah.
But if I stop, I have released more high yellow diamonds than I can count when, back in 2003, 4, 5, 6, when I was doing rescues and going to Terry Hills and all over Castle Hill and everything, doing all sorts of rescues. I just don't have the interest. Why would you want something that's probably got skin worms, has probably got some sort of gut bacteria, parasites, needed to be treated and,
And probably not going to do great in the wild anyway. In captivity if it's an adult,
and when the quality of captive bred animals we have is incredible these days at reasonable prices too, like albino Darwin's at $350, what a stunning animal. Why would you want to go out there and find something wild, like people poaching that many animals? It's not about, oh, gee whiz, It is wrong. It's just, Yeah,
I know what Matty Trav says, 10,000 people taking one animal, still killing the wild population. Very true, but I don't think 10,000 people are taking anything from the wild. There's poachers, yes, a different story, that are taking, everything they can get to send overseas. That's a whole another story, but I don't think there's that many people just taking anything out of the bush, unless it's a pied carpet python.
No,
that's another story, But
not
anything.
If that's your concern, the several million vehicles driving around squishing them on the road is a far greater concern than that.
More are dying from that than being taken.
I mean, I know it's a different animal, but I remember a road trip I did many years ago, and we drove. It was out Western Queensland. We were coming back from Mount Isa, but we went between. I can't remember the two places, but it was 120 something k's the run, and we had my nephew with me at the time. He was only young, and he was like, "Oh, it's on board." I'm like, "Well, count all the dead kangaroos on the road," and I think we averaged a kangaroo for every 1.5 k.
Yeah.
It was just like, there'd be one here, then there'd be 10. Where a truck had just gone along and there'd be carcasses everywhere. So there's more killed on roads than would ever be taken from the wild. Not that I'm saying that is an okay thing to do, but yeah.
Yep.
It's
absolutely. I mean, really, no one should be taking animals from the wild, bottom line, but there's the level of guilt. We're all guilty. We all have animals in boxes anyway. They
all came from the wild. If people harp on about smugglers and blah 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 blah. Well, I hope you don't have jags. I hope you don't have caramels. I hope you don't have zebras. I hope you don't have granites. All these were smuggled in at some point. If you've got them in your collection, then you're a hypocrite. End of story. You've got an animal in your collection and you're going to whinge about those taking them out of the wild. Get rid of your collection, because they all came out of the wild. That was how they did it. I remember back, joining Hawkesbury Herps back in 2000 or something like that, and talking to one of the old keepers there, and he goes, back in the day, you get one from the wild, you take it home, you look after it, this, that, and the other. If you had eggs, you give a few babies away. He was against selling reptiles at all, but that was just how it was back then.
And before, 76 or something, there was no law against it anyway. You could, some of the old herpers you talk to, that was a Sunday trip, into the Boom Mountain, was to grab a diamond and take it home, and you were doing nothing wrong, it was just, that's how it was. Same as there's no protection against spiders and certain species of spiders now. You can go in the bush and grab whatever you want. There's no, they're not protected in any way. It's frowned upon, but it's not, it's not illegal. And that's how reptiles were not so many years ago. For some people have kept reptiles their life. So
yeah, that's exactly right. So it is what it is. But anyway, it's a topic that will never end. Everyone has their opinion. Yeah, it's like politics.
Yeah, people just behave yourself, be nice, and be happy.
Yeah, that's it. But anyway, that's enough dribbling from us. So I hope everyone enjoyed having Michelle on. It was awesome to have her on. I'm sure we'll have her back again soon. And we will try to have some more guests coming in soon. Got a couple of ideas and a few people that would like to come on and chat to. So keep an eye on our pages. So Brent, if people want to get in contact with you, how do they do that?
khpreptiles.com.au. The webpage is a contact form there. Most people get me through Facebook. Seems to be the main attraction. The page messenger or Brent Smith on Messenger. And you, Daz, Mr. Morelia by Design.
Yeah, Darren Whittingham, Morelia by Design on Facebook, Instagram, and don't forget our YouTube channels. So please like and share and do all that sort of stuff. And that's it for us. Thanks, guys. Thanks for everyone dropping in and watching. And we will see you all on the next one. Night from me.
Cheers, guys.
Bye, guys.